Now that we have the shutter system out of the way, we're going to tackle the body. For its condition, being from the 1930s, it's not too bad. A couple of the bumps here, but I'm not going to be too worried about it. But there is a little bit of a nick here that exposes the metal. I will see how I can tackle that one. But in the meantime, I'm just going to tackle the inside barrel that the shutter and lens sits on. So one thing to figure out is the bellow, or the more of like the metal tube bellow that the Kolibri was made famous for, is all metallic, so I don't have to worry about that. But there's a lot of dust inside the sitting area, and just trying to figure out how one should go about it. So there are 4 springs inside here that you can see, 2 on this side and 2 on that side. And so before I even start taking anything apart, I do want to bring this to the relaxed position, so the closed position. And this way it's not putting the springs that are inside under any kind of tension. So I'm just going to open this up right now. And from the looks of it, there are 2 screws that sits in here. I'm just going to remove those 2 screws out. As that will remove this plate. Alright. Make sure you store these screws somewhere that's safe, as they are really tiny. Alright, this should pop up. Let's see if I can figure it away. Gonna be presumed that. Oh, wait. Alright, so I see there's also a couple of screws here. That probably is the reason why this is still on it. So, just gonna try to take those off. Get a smaller screwdriver. There we go. Just be patient and make sure you don't end up stripping these screws off, as I'm pretty sure it'll be very difficult to relocate without a donor body. does feel like it's loosened up. It should be able to come off. There we go. And that popped it out. Alright, so we'll just put this on the side. Alright, let's see what else is needed here. So it doesn't seem like there's any kind of screw, but there are some threading inside here, and I'm wondering if this actually just holds on to it. Nope. Okay. So next, I'm just going to try to tackle the outside here. Just taking it apart one bit at a time. There are 4 screws that sits on this resting plate. And they're quite long. There's definitely quite a bit of dust that has collected inside this barrel. So all we're trying to really do at this point is just removing the dust, cleaning it out, make sure there's no more debris in there. I'm trying to see if I can actually get to what looks like an inside threading that basically focuses the lens in and out. Right. And this one should pop out just like so. Alright. Now they've removed that ring. Just going to remove the focusing knob. Which has the 2 screws here that hold it together. And just put that on the side. All right. And what it looks like, there's 2 scorch marks here, which I believe that's where the entrance for this ring and the focusing that comes on. So I'm just gonna unscrew it. That should pop it out. I'm just gonna grab one of my spanners. Okay, I'm just gonna untwist this. And it seems like that came off on its own from the bottom. So I'm just gonna open the back. Just being extra careful. Okay. So that came off on its own, and that's going to be the entrance point for this threading. Alright. And looks like there's also a washer in there that I'm just going to keep in place, as it seems to be in its place. Alright. I don't know if this will come off. Just gonna try one more time. And it does seem to come off. Which is a good thing. There we go. Alright, so this will make it easier to clean and also relube. Alright. Well, in this situation, I honestly think this will be the most I can get out of it without the need for having it taken apart more than that. So we'll just start cleaning it off, and just like I showed with most of my tutorial, I'm just going to use isopropyl alcohol to kind of wipe all this dust off and just kind of give it a good clean. It is quite sticky from years of being stored. You can see all the dirt that's coming off of it. So in this case, I'm just going to grab some isopropyl. Just pour some out. And I'm just going to go ahead and start cleaning. With the isopropyl alcohol, it would kind of get all its gunk off. And at this point, I'm just saturating it to the point where it digs deep into the dirt and just soaks it up. Right. At this stage, you're probably going to be going through a lot of Q-tips. So make sure you have quite a bit on hand to use. have to use any kind of means possible without damaging any of the treads. There we go. I'm just gonna also use this to kind of clean anything that's around here. Doesn't seem to be a lot of dirt. There is a screw that seems to hold this in place, but at this point, if you really want to go ahead and be crazy with it, I suggest to sometimes leave things alone, as sometimes things aren't worth taking apart. But at this point, it seems that most of everything I want to take out here is now cleaned off. Just gonna let that air dry for a second. Alright, now I'm just gonna grab this. Also get cleaning. As you can see, you start seeing the scoring area here that was used to mark the actual entrance, as sometimes if you do mess up with where the focusing knob unscrews and screws in, you have an issue of having the right type of focusing range. So if you don't have that, then you'll have to basically go through trial and error to figure out where it goes in and where it goes out. And from the stories I've heard, that could be quite a while to sometimes figure things out. Alright. Just getting anything that's inside that would hinder anything from having a smooth focusing. Not that it didn't have any issues to begin with, but at the same time, it won't be a bad thing to clean everything out as best as you could. Yep. And one good thing about isopropyl alcohol is it just air dries, and sometimes you don't have to do much in the sense of drying up So all we're just going to do is clean it up, nice and clean. I'm not going to mess around with this screw, but I will clean this. I might some hardened grease I might just have to clean off by scraping it off. Some glue residue that's lying on top of here. There we go. Okay, I'm just gonna grab, actually, I'll be right back. It's always nice to have one of these little dental tools to get into the threads without damaging. Some more Q-tips and collect any of the residue that you just kicked up. Don't be afraid to kind of push hard with your cotton Q-tips, as it doesn't really damage the surface. Alright, just gonna let that air dry. So meantime, I'll just grab this plate and just clean anything that's also filled up underneath. Like so. And might as well also do the plate. There we go. Perfect. Now on the body itself, there is some oxidization from the brass, I'm assuming, that was used to, so I'm just gonna get some of that surface. Anything that's green or bluish green tint, I'm just gonna remove with the use of the Q-tip. It's kind of more evident here as well. And the best way of doing so would be saturating the leather, popping it all out, and really getting in there deep and making sure that you've cleaned up everything. For now, I'm not too concerned, and I could probably leave it for another video and sometime in the future when it needs to be looked after. But at this point, it's really not too bad. So I'm just gonna use that judgment and hopefully that would be okay for now. I'm just gonna clean the viewfinder that kind of pops up. Get any kind of dirt or grime that blocks the vision. And then I'm just gonna pop this open and grab anything around the sides here. There seems to be some foam that seals the light, and it seems to be in okay condition. So, I just lost my light. So at this point, I'm just going to leave it on its own because it doesn't seem like it's deteriorated. I'm just going to clean any of that oxidization on the sides, anywhere that basically has bare metal. Alright. I'm just going to clean inside here as much as I could possibly. So at this point, I am just gonna go and apply some grease onto the threads. So in this case, I'm just gonna use some Somali grease as well. This time I'm just gonna be a little bit more liberal with it. I'm just gonna put it in 3 different points. There we go. And I'm just gonna work it into it. And I'm just gonna gently find a way to screw it in without forcing it. There we go, that should start working itself out. And again, I'm just going to work it in and out by screwing it in and unscrewing it. That should hopefully start working the grease in there. But at the same time, I will apply a little bit of the dry lubrication onto where it actually has contact with the metal piece, the back. So I'm just going to apply some of the dry lube more along the edges here. Probably should have applied that before I applied the grease, but that's okay. You just have to be careful with it. There we go. Alright, so I'm just going to put that on again. Just let it fall in. Just kind of find the grooves and don't force in too much. There we go. Just gonna grab my spammer. And just let it go in. Okay, just gonna let it in just like so. And then this one, I'm just gonna apply some of that grease. In between the threads. I might actually use a brush to actually spread it. Alrighty. So I'm just going to put this back from inside. And actually, just be careful with the hinge doors here because it doesn't fully go in, so I'm just going to be extra careful with this. I'm just going to remove or loosen this up a bit. And then in the barrel itself, there is a little bit of a gap. Not sure if you can see it, It's right here. And that is basically where this sits in. So I'm just going to turn this other way around and just slide her in. If anything, I might actually remove this partially out. Like so. And I'm just gonna place this in here. Actually, scratch that, and I'm just... Alright, after taking some time to figure out how to put this back together, I've actually scored another entry point in order to match this with this and then screw it on tight, which would eventually get you back to where you initially were with the focusing. So one thing was kind of tough was to kind of make this lay flat enough with your fingers while matching the little slot that this pin goes into. It will take quite a bit of maneuvering, quite a bit of frustration, quite a bit of in between to finally get it where you need it to be. I've actually screwed this on first all the way through until it was tight, and then did a full circle back where I unscrewed it a full circuit backwards. This way I was able to give the maximum focusing range for this one I found. So grabbing it back this way, and I start tightening. Which will put it flush towards these two scores here. And then once I put the focusing knob on, this should equate to infinity. There's a way, if I get a chance, to show you how I'm going to test that in a later video. So, in this situation, this is finally done. And on to cleaning other parts of the camera, which was basically the little bits and pieces that still is attached to it. So in this case, I'm just going to start cleaning the focusing knob. That required a bit of a touch. Even some of these screws just needed a little bit of a touch up as well. Alright. Once everything is nice and cleaned up, I'm just going to start realigning the knob, making sure you drop in your screws to the respective holes without potentially misplacing them. There we go. That kind of puts it in for you. You don't over tighten it too much. Alright, perfect. So next, we're just going to put this one back. And basically at this point, you're just really putting back everything the way you took it out. I don't want to over tighten these screws here, as I want to make sure that they all go in the same way. Sometimes if you tighten one end more than the others, you'll add too much pressure and nothing will align with the holes. So you kind of want to make sure. That you align this. And just semi-tighten them until you got all of them into their respective areas. And once that's the case, you can just start tightening them into place. Alright. So everything's nice and clean. Everything seems to move the way it needs to move. Alright. What to do is just simply put this plate back where it needs to be. So just kind of align the holes in together, and everything should technically snap in place. There we go. Alright. I'm just going to start off by putting these two screws in first. Make sure you put them in nice and tight. Like so. And onto the smaller screws. That go in here. And here we are tightening all the screws, and the plate is back on. Now the only thing that's left is to mount the lens. Now that everything is put back together, cleaned up, and looks like everything is okay, we are going to put the lens back on it. So, just gonna grab the lens, and all that needs to be done is to put this on the side, mount the metal washer first that came with it, and then mount the two, or I should say the three pieces of the paper washers onto it. This one's a little bit ripped, but that's okay. We can still use it. If anything, there we go. Now, this little bracket has a little bit of a divot, and that's where the insert for the shutter release cable goes into. So that'll be the easiest way to figure out how and where to put this. So all you're doing is aligning it so it will just sit just like that. And in the meantime, you're going to flip this over, and hopefully just going to grab this lock ring that we can hopefully, here we go. And then I'm just going to start threading it with a screwdriver. Just gently try and put it back in its place. And hopefully you should notice it grabbing. So once we've hand tightened the mounting screw, the lock screw, whichever you want to kind of call it, I'm just going to grab my spammer and just give it a final twist to tighten it. Just make sure that you have the right fitting and that you're not rushing it, because the last thing you want to do is damage the back element with the tool. And let's see here. It seems to be nice and snug. There we go. Just gonna give it a final test. I'm just gonna pull it out, twist it back on. And there you have it. We can say that this was a success. And I can't wait to take this out once I get the respective film for it. And it should be ready to take out and shoot with. Alright, well, thank you so much for this, following through the series. I know the videos tend to be very long, but try to get them as detailed as I could possibly get them. So again, I appreciate the follows and the views, and yeah, stay tuned for my next couple of projects that I have in store. Alright, thank you so much. Have yourself a good one.